I know you're a big superhero now, but that doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want. Your father never learned that lesson. He thought because he saved people, they owed him, and he could treat them any way he wanted. Today on the Comic Book Report, Rogue Sun Volume 1, Cataclysm. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today we're going to be doing a review for a massiveverse title, Rogue Sun. The Massiveverse is a shared superhero universe over at Image Comics. Kyle Higgins' Radiant Black was kind of the pioneering book in this whole universe. I would say that's probably still the main book in that canon. But this is one of the superheroes within that shared universe. You do not need to read that to enjoy this title. And wow, can I not wait to talk about today's book. Before we jump in though, I do want to shout out the channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out the website. You can find a link for it in this video's description. If you see something you like, you can even use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to save $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume are written by Ryan Parrott and illustrated by Abel. The comics in this volume were first published by Image Comics beginning in 2022. The volume itself collects Rogue Sun, issues 1 through 6. And finally, this is a standard-size trade paperback edition with glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and 176 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at today's trade paperback collection from Image Comics. I will say that this book was highly recommended by a couple commenters, so if you're them, definitely shout out in the comments. I'm finally doing a review for this book. I was aware of this also after reading Radiant Black or a couple trades of that. I know I also read portions of Dead Lucky, which is another Massiveverse title. Anyway, I am curious about this shared superhero universe over at Image going on right now. I found this for a fair price, and I thought I would give it a shot. The trade paperback does have a pretty standard design, but I like all the black and red. I just think it looks really striking. So this is a volume 1 for this series. Even though it's part of the Radiant Black kind of Massiveverse, you don't really need to read anything going into this. This is completely new reader friendly. This is about a kind of supernatural themed superhero. Really an interesting book. I can't wait to jump into it, but I will just say, looking at the exteriors, I think the design work is really good and pretty indicative of what you can expect jumping in here. I don't know if you caught it, but the front cover actually had an excerpt from Eric Kripke, who is the showrunner for Supernatural and I believe The Boys, so kind of fun to see that name here. Now that we've looked at the exteriors, just a quick look at the binding of this book. It is a glued binding. This is just a small 6-issue book. We do have a little bit of gutter loss, but nothing too critical. I think the binding held up fairly well, I should say. Again, just pretty standard fare here, but prospective collectors out there, I just wanted to give you a look at what you can expect from this book. Okay, and with that out of the way, we can go ahead and jump into the collection proper. Like I said, this is Rogue Sun, and other than being recommended to me by a couple commenters and being vaguely aware of this Massiveverse after reading a couple other titles, I didn't really know much about this at all. I knew that this was supposed to be maybe a supernatural themed hero, possibly a horror series, but again, just didn't know too much. I went in completely blank slate for all intents and purposes. This collection, like I said, has the first 6 issues. We don't have the actual issue covers up front in front of the issues. We have kind of chapter headings on a black page. I actually think that this was really well done, but I would have loved to see a full-size like cover at front as well. I do like that we still got chapters, so we are aware of where we're at in this series, but again, it was a little bit bummer. They saved them for the end, and they're kind of thumbnail size. They're not even full page. You'll see that as I get to the back of this review, though, but that is something I wanted to mention about how this is all put together. But anyway, we start with this kind of epic battle where this hero, Rogue Son, is defeated by some kind of unseen enemy. And the next thing we know, we're following this kind of bully of a teenager. We find out that it was his father, who was the previous Rogue Son, who was killed in battle. And we see that he's raised by his single mother. He's kind of this dysfunctional teenager trying to find himself and acting out. He's really not a likable protagonist. I'll say that right from the jump. To make the main character a bully, it just didn't make him sympathetic right off the bat. He does have a lot of humor and kind of wit, and you can see this kind of guarded pain for maybe what happened to him as a kid, not having a father and things like that. So I guess he's sympathetic in that way, but he's not overly likable. Anyway, him and his mother get pulled into the will reading of his estranged father. They're at the house of his father's new family. He has a widow along with 2 kids that are comparable in age to him, maybe a little bit younger, an elder daughter who's, again, a little bit younger than our main hero, and then kind of a younger boy. This is where we find out, or at least he finds out, that his father was this superhero known as Rogue Son. We do come to find out the wife, or not the wife, his mother knew, that I guess kind of the ex-partner, knew about this as well, kind of met him as a superhero, just kind of left the son out of it, didn't tell him anything about that. The new family as well also all knew his identity, so it was really only the main character that was in the dark. So at this will reading, we have the father kind of leaving most of the stuff to his family, but then leaving his eldest son, our main character, this artifact known as the Sunstone. And when he holds on to it, this thing beeps when there's trouble, and when he kind of grips it, he gets empowered and becomes the new Rogue Son. The suit is kind of super powered. It can have these sort of like fire blasting abilities. He can fly with them. He's stronger, more durable, things like that. And the Sunstone is, for all intents and purposes, kind of haunted by his father, who has since passed away, but he can kind of inhabit the suit, and only he can hear him, being kind of the Sunstone wearer. His dad's trying to train him and teach him how to use this suit to basically stop kind of paranormal or supernatural threats against the world. We find out that the Sunstone is basically the vehicle by which you can become the Rogue Son, who's kind of the defender of the world against all things evil and supernatural. Like I said, it has this warning, and it kind of triggers you in that, okay, it's time to save the world. But the son, like I said, he's kind of a punk. He's a little bit of a bully, and he takes the power and he's excited, but he wants to have nothing to do with his estranged father. He also doesn't know totally how to use the powers. He's maybe far from heroic, but you get the sense that he wants to do the best he can. But again, he has a chip on his shoulder. He doesn't really want to listen to anyone, certainly not his father, who never wanted to be around him in life. He's also questioning why he left it to this son. Is there some kind of deal going on here? When I haven't heard from you, why wouldn't you leave it to your kids who are always with you? Why did you leave it to me, and you wanted to have nothing to do with me my whole life? So these questions are all being asked. We also have just interesting dynamics with his kind of half-siblings. We kind of get this idea that basically the dad, the first mission, the first order of business is, hey, you need to find out who murdered me, and we need to kind of prevent them from hurting anyone else. The son doesn't really want to go along with it, but he makes him a deal, basically says, okay, I will find out who murdered you, but when I do, you have to leave this suit and like go on to the afterlife. I don't want to have anything to do with you. So the deal is kind of struck, and that's the setup at the beginning of this series. So this first arc is really trying to find out who killed his father and trying to get his kind of feet wet in being Rogue Son, this superhero. Along the way, we find out more about his new family and a bit about his old family. We find out kind of how his mother felt about his father. We could see that the half-siblings, the sister was pretty, wanted to really just, love her dad, but the father was always kind of removed being this hero. The son really looked up to his father and always wanted to kind of inherit the Sunstone for himself one day. So again, there's kind of these chip-on-your-shoulder feelings to a lot of it. The father is also, you get the feeling, just not a really good father, even to his own newer family. In fact, he actually suspects that they are the ones that ordered his assassination. So first it looks like the youngest son, who actually wasn't doing that. He was trying to bring him back or find a way to communicate with them. Then it looked like it was the eldest daughter, but she was actually trying to do this other thing for the benefit of all of them. But anyway, that's who he's kind of chasing down in these early issues. Along the way, he has to fight a werewolf vampire hybrid. He has to fight this kind of evil woman that the daughter kind of summons up. Along the way, we also get some kind of mythos or lore building in this universe. There's this kind of antique store that basically, in all of the kind of diamonds or jeweled glass that's maybe in these kind of ornate chandeliers or what have you, it's actually the spirits of all of these kind of supernatural creatures and enemies of the world that this antique store owner basically traps all of these creatures in as kind of a supermax prison. Really kind of a creepy scenario. We actually have that werewolf vampire hybrid kind of trapped in one of these. We have an escape out of one of those as well. Anyway, just really fascinating stuff as far as building out the world building of this universe. We have a lot of good kind of personal dynamics with this main character, the main protagonist, as he, again, just tries to navigate some complex feelings, trying to figure out who he is, his own sense of identity, and add to that the layer of he's now maybe a superhero, but he also now has to spend time with the spirit of his dead dad who never wanted to have anything to do with him. You get the feeling that there's also a lot of history here that the main character, and by extension us as readers, are just really unaware of. Really like that this kind of jumps in on the middle of the story and we're kind of entering into it following our main character, and whether he's likable or not, he's our vehicle by which we understand this world. I do think overall the writing in this book is fairly strong. It's really clear to me that the author had a vision for this. I think that the characters are very well defined. I actually think that that's maybe my favorite part of the writing in this book, is I think that the characters are just really well made. The dialogue is pretty strong and the kind of lore building of the world is also quite fun, but I think it's the characters that are really rooted for me. I found myself feeling like even though we had these big kind of supernatural action-packed superhero plots, it was really the character moments that really moved further for me. Moving over to the illustrations, I would say overall the art is really wonderful. It absolutely matches the subject matter. I do think that the style maybe leans a little more animated or cartoony than straight up realistic, but I think it adds to this kind of, again, sort of dreamlike quality of a lot of the lore here with some of these creatures and this kind of otherworldliness to it all. Again, I think the art's just really well done. The color palettes and coloring they use on this book as well, really everything just jumps from the page. I think it's really striking and different. I will say overall, though, there is this feeling like I think that in these 6 issues, it maybe probably could have been a 9 issues that was a little bit like stretched out, a little bit slower paced, took its time a bit more. I do feel like there are a couple issues that felt maybe a bit compressed or tried to cover too much ground. Maybe it's just because I read this in 1 or 2 sittings, but I felt like there was this sense of a little bit of a rush, and I think that I would have liked to see it kind of take its time a bit more, get a little bit more character building with a few key characters. I still think that we got that to a degree, but I think that kind of shoehorning in all of these monster battles, I think that maybe we could have, again, slowed it down just a little bit. But other than that, I do think it was pretty well done. I think that this was a fantastic kind of inaugural volume for this superhero series. I am fascinated to think how this could cross over with a character like Radiant Black. There was kind of a brief Easter egg in one panel that the Radiants might be part of this universe. But again, other than that, it still feels really disconnected. At this point, there's no real need to read any of the other stuff to enjoy this. Going back to the storyline for a moment, and this is where I'm going to get into much heavier spoilers. Toward the end of this collection, we do in fact find out who murdered the father, and it was none other than this main character's mother. Oh, gasp, I know, who could believe it? But I really didn't expect the mother character. She felt very mundane, and I felt like her role was very much as this guiding force. We find out that she kind of pledged herself to this evil creature in exchange for powers to defeat her, basically, ex-husband, boyfriend, whoever he was. And so we find that the mom felt threatened and didn't want him near her son, didn't want to endanger him. Anyway, we find out that she has these kind of gnarly magic powers. So we have a final confrontation between our main character and his own mother. We do have a resolution where the mom is kind of taken out to a degree. She's put in that sort of jail I was mentioning earlier, and the father leaves the suit, and we just have the son feeling tremendously alone. He essentially gets taken in by his father's new family, so his sort of, I guess, stepmom and half siblings in their father's old house. But again, he feels very alone, at a loss, and that's the crossroads in which this story leaves us, presumably going right into the volume 2. Anyway, that's the storyline. At the back of the book here, we had those extras, the thumbnails of the covers, some variant art, solicitations for the other Massiveverse books. And that really is your look at Rogue Sun, Volume 1, Cataclysm. And now all that's left is to give this book a grade. For a surprisingly fresh new superhero in the Massiveverse universe, the Comic Book Report is going to give Rogue Sun Volume 1 a be. This was definitely well above average and better than I had expected. For a supernatural-based superhero, I felt like it was light on horror and good on characterization, which was a really fun blend for me. The art throughout it was consistent and strong, and I think that there's enough foundation here to build a really promising series. But let me know what you think of this in the comments. Let me know if you're a Rogue Sun reader, what you think of the Massiveverse in general. I would just love to hear from all of you. I'm enjoying doing some of these indie books here and there. I know Image is still a big publisher. Anyway, this book was a ton of fun. I enjoyed reviewing it, but let me know what you think. And until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks so much and have a good one.